Building up to architecture's big award now on BBC Two and on BBC HD. Let's take a close look in this week's CultureFest.
Hello and welcome to the Culture Show. This week we're all about architecture, from the pants to the prize winning, from the X to the ooh. We've got the full site survey. Coming up tonight, my pick of the shortlist for this year's Sterling Prize. What do young architects get up to when money's tight? The joy of self-build. And hold on to your hard hats, it's the Carbuncle Cup. Now this Saturday we'll find out which building has won the 2012 RIBA Sterling Prize. I've been taking a look at the nominees of the UK's most prestigious architecture award. Cities can be instantly recognised by the standout buildings on their skylines. But this year's Sterling Prize shortlist reflects a change from pointlessly protruding architecture towards a more down-to-earth kind of building. Most of these wouldn't jump out at you if you were scanning the skyline, but that's exactly the point. This is an exciting return to a richer, more intelligent kind of architecture. Back on the shortlist is Sir David Chipperfield, this time with the Hepworth Museum in Wakefield, built as a tribute to the artist Barbara Hepworth. Eye-catching, yes, but it belongs in its surroundings. And Stanton Williams's Sainsbury Laboratory at Cambridge University, built to work in harmony with the botanic gardens cherished by the local community. There's a confident understatement here, a move away from shiny, glossy monoliths towards something you might call the anti-icon. Architecture without bells and whistles, but with sensitivity and intelligence. And no one sums this up more than superstar architect Rem Koolhaas, ironically known for his dislike of ego-led design, with two buildings on the shortlist. The first, Maggie's Cancer Care Centre in Glasgow, a ring of interlocking rectangular spaces set in the grounds of Gart Naval Hospital. The second, New Court, is a series of stacked glass blocks in the City of London, a revamped headquarters for the Rothschild Bank, which sits next to showstoppers such as the Gherkin, but this is far less flamboyant. If you look at the other skyscrapers that have gone up recently around the city, they are kind of logo architecture. So this is where your building is quite sort of subtle and layered.
First of all, I always have liked kind of modest buildings, but this has been reinforced in the last 10 years, kind of simply because I could see architecture being pushed toward a kind of increasingly extreme part of this spectrum, and I really felt that, you know, if we all hang out there, kind of we'll fall into a cliff, and that
and that's what's happened.
and that therefore it's kind of probably important to withdraw from it.
So how did you find that went down with clients to begin with, the kind of anti-icon approach? I mean,
interestingly enough, it is quite a hard sell. I notice, and we rarely declare it kind of in the beginning.
Do you think subtlety will become more of a common quality?
Subtlety will triumph.
Do you think it will?
Subtlety will triumph. No, I don't think so. I think there are too many. I mean, the sheer quantities that we're dealing with, the economic system, the kind of political back and forth, all of that will not kind of really lead to a kind of mass outbreak of subtlety. I think.
You can be confident in that. The next building on the shortlist is far from subtle. In fact, it's the most seen building this summer in the whole world, the Olympic Stadium. But with its recycled materials and designed to be part dismantled, it has less of an impact than previous stadiums. But enough of Olympic glory. The last building on the list is the one I'm most excited about. The Lyric Theatre in Belfast stands head and shoulders above the rest, just not literally, of course. This is the fourth Sterling Prize nomination for architects O'Donnell and Toomey. But these two don't do tricks. Their architecture is free from ostentatious overstatements. Their greatest efforts are put into the feel of the building. Oh, it's got an amazing smell, doesn't it? It smells like it's very woody. It feels like being inside a
violin case. Well, that's quite intentional.
But it is all handmade in timber, yeah, and it is all jointed together by craftsmen.
Well, it feels like a kind of warm cave. There's something sort of very cavernous about it.
Oh, that's a nice description.
The theatre has been designed to create a sense of community by creasing the seating so that the audience can see each other, as well as a clear view of the stage. But as well as taking care of the enormous technical requirements of the theatre, they have remained true to their ethos of designing strong, lasting buildings. There's been a huge reaction in the last few years, I think probably since the economic crisis hit, against that kind of shiny iconography that really dominated in the noughties and the late 90s. And I mean, how do you see that as well?
I don't know. I think it's hard to say. I mean, we've never done shiny, really. I mean,
No, you haven't. That's what I mean.
So the work we're doing now relates very much in the character of materials. I think we're very consciously trying to make something that feels contemporary and works for its function, but that doesn't feel kind of shiny new.
I would hope, actually, that as soon as this building is no longer new, that you wouldn't think about it as new. You would just think about it as part of the ground of Belfast.
You've been on the shortlist now quite a few times on the Selling Prize. Do you think that architecture's had a turn? Do you think this is your moment?
Some people asked us in some earlier time, how would it feel if you won? And I have to say, I have no idea how it would feel if we won, but I know exactly how it will feel if we lose, because I've done that 3 times.
The Lyric began in the founder's front room, and it's still got a really homely feel, which is quite a feat in a building this civic. It's made of warm, tactile materials like wood, concrete and brick. It's an impeccably made building, which, trust me, is really rare in the UK, and full of such deft touches and such complexity. You can look up there and look up there, look over there, so that every time you come back here, there's something new to explore. It's a very rich building. In fact, it's as close to perfection in a piece of architecture as you're likely to find. This year's Sterling Prize shortlist is a welcome return to architecture with heart. Buildings that sit in context with their surroundings and work perfectly for their purpose. The Hepworth Museum, the Sainsbury Laboratory, Coolhouse's Maggie's Centre and New Court, the Olympic Stadium and the Lyric Theatre. I've got absolutely no idea which building the Sterling Prize judges are going to plump for, but this one's definitely my winner. I reckon this is the year we see the end of that Starchitect show-off kind of building, and not before time. Who knows how the recession's really going to affect architecture in the future? For now, let's enjoy what we might look back on as a bit of a golden age in architecture. Next, we're all familiar with the idea that our home is our castle. But these days, it seems many Brits dream of building their own place as well as owning it. Charlie Luxon thinks they've got just the right idea.
When you hear the words self-build, what do you think of? Chances are you probably imagine something like this. A grand design, architecturally striking, built with vision and care. And who lives in a house like this? None other than the chair of the National Self-Build Association, Ted Stevens. Hello, Ted. Hello, fellas, how are you? Right. Are you well?
Yeah, come on in.
Lovely, look at this view. That is beautiful, isn't it? What a wonderful location.
It's a great location on a sunny day.
So as a self-builder, did you sort of roll up your sleeves and sort of build it yourself?
Well, it's a bit of a misnomer, self-building. People think that you have to lay the bricks yourself if you're doing a self-build, but really that isn't the way. As I said, the vast majority of people hire a builder to do the guts and...
Get the experts in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because this is one of the extraordinary things about self-build, isn't it? That this country is incredibly behind the rest of Europe and the rest of the world in the amount of self-build that we do.
It's very mainstream in every other country. About half of all the homes in most European countries are built by people who hire an architect and a builder, or perhaps do a bit of the work themselves. But it's just easy as falling off a log in those countries. Whereas, you know, in England, it's only about 1 in 20 homes.
It's about 5% of housing in England is self-delivery, self-build.
Currently, and yet it's 50% in nearly every other country.
What is the role of self-build in delivering the masses of housing that we need to build in this country?
Well, the big change will come when groups of people are involved in schemes. So rather than individuals like me building a single house, it's when a gang of 10 or 20 people get together, perhaps with a developer, perhaps with an architect or a contractor working with them, and then you'll get real scale. And that's the way they do it in Europe.
The shining example of this right now is Almere in the Netherlands. 3,000 new homes, all of them self-delivered. There are 8 simple rules to follow, which cover the height and how close to the edge of the plot people can build. But after that, they're left to get on with it. And instead of it being a bit of a mess, as many feared, Almere is in fact a really vibrant, stimulating environment, where a 2-bedroom apartment will set you back just £69,000. So you're now actually beginning to see government sort of support for this, because I know when I first started looking at the sector sort of 10 years ago, there was basically no government policy on self-build, absolutely zero. I mean, that is beginning to change, isn't it?
It has changed, and the current government have been really supportive of it. So we've got a £30 million investment fund to help groups get projects away. And the biggest thing has been the change to the planning regulations. So now, for example, every planning authority in the UK has got to measure the demand there is in their area for people who want to build their own home, and they've got to make some provision for it. That means they've got to try and make land available or encourage self-build to happen in some way. In the past, that never happened at all.
So finally, it seems as though here in the UK, we're waking up to the potential of self-build to deliver mass housing. And here in Bristol is one of the early exemplars of this whole approach. It's Ashley-Vale. Ashley-Vale is a brilliant example of what can happen when people work together. This site was going to be turned into a bunch of generic boxes by one of the big developers, but the locals got organised and convinced the council to sell the site to them instead, and set about building their own development.
We've got about 40 homes on the site.
Right, so I mean that's not just one person building a house.
No.
That's quite a serious development, delivered through self-build.
Delivered through self-build, but more importantly, delivered through community. So the community range took on the site, the community got people involved in the process, and it's people from the community that then got involved in actually building their own home. So because we came up with 20 plots and some units in the middle, it allowed us to get the plot prices down to around £25,000 to £45,000,
wow,
which included the infrastructure as well.
That is cheap.
So it's a service plot.
That is really cheap. What's it cost to then build a house?
Well, how long's a piece of string? You know, a lot of the houses on the site were probably built between a cost of about 40,000 up to probably about 120,000 for the build cost.
Right, so some people in this development have got themselves a house for about £75,000 or £80,000.
Yes. Now, you're not just getting a house that's cheaper, but you're getting something that you've been involved in the process, which is just, you know, you almost can't put value to that.
If the government is keen for the housing sector to help jumpstart our ailing economy, then it seems to me self-build is a perfect model. Developer-led projects are all about maximising profits, and those profits go straight to their shareholders. Self-build, on the other hand, is all about spreading the money locally. The money you pay a local joiner on a Friday is going to find its way into a local curry house that night and into local shops the following day. Could these new self-build projects hold the key to bringing us out of recession? In Leeds, the Lilac project is now underway. It's a co-housing scheme with a real emphasis on sustainability. What's it going to look like when it's finished?
These are the two-storey houses. There's houses here. Here there'll be a beautifully landscaped area with food and play all happening here. There'll be a pond in the middle.
The walls of these houses are made from, wait for it, straw. Mod cell is a system where bales are pinned together with sharpened wooden broom handles inside a timber frame, which is then rendered with lime. It's cheap, it's plentiful, and it's done locally. Mod cell have set up a flying factory at a nearby farm, keeping transport costs down. So timber cladding, lime render, super insulated, super airtight.
Yeah.
Is it really affordable? I mean, how much is your house going to cost, and what is going to be the running costs?
The energy bill is going to be, the heating bill is only going to be about £60 a year for...
£60 a year to have a nice, warm home.
Can't wait, can't
Brilliant,
wait.
isn't it? More sustainable, cheaper houses. What's not to love? Could it be that we're on the cusp of a revolution? Let's say you're interested in the self-build. What do we need to do to get this thing to speed up, to make this revolution happen?
Well, it's about people in the end and the power that they've got. So I would call on groups of people, young people, it's perfect for them. Make a bit of noise. You don't have to set fire to cars, but convince people in councils and in planning authorities that it's a good way of building, and then it really will take off.
Now, you may not have heard of the Carbuncle Cup, but the clue's in the name. This is the one gong over which no architect gloats. The organisers hope that by spotlighting the bad, they might encourage the good. I met up with one of this year's judges, Owen Hatherley, to take a tour around some of Britain's most horrible edifices.
A lot of modern buildings in Britain, I think, look a bit ugly. You don't need me or Prince Charles to tell you this.
But what is proposed seems to me like a monstrous carbuncle.
Just look around you and take a look at something like this, or this, or this. Pig ugly stuff, lots of it, everywhere. Cluttering up the streets, offending my eye at every turn. In 2006, the architectural journal Building Design launched its controversial Carbuncle Cup. The cup is awarded to any architect whose work over the previous 12 months has not quite come up to the aesthetic standards of, say, Bob the Builder. The roll call of previous winners has not been pretty. This year, a strong field of ham-fisted comical constructions made the list. Among the nominees were Anish Kapoor's Olympic commission, The Orbit. For once, words fail me. A library in Birmingham with a strange shard sticking out of the end. And Belfast's Titanic Museum, which is meant to represent the collision of the famous ocean liner with the iceberg that sank it.
Developers and architects hate this award, and who can blame them? Who'd want to win it? But in an age of shoddily designed, over-marketed, profit-driven architecture, we need this prize more than ever before.
The writer Owen Hatherley has spent the last few years surveying the state of our architecture in his two books, A Guide to the New Ruins of Great Britain, and his latest, A New Kind of Bleak. He's also served as a judge on the Carbuncle panel, so who better to be my guide around this year's winner? The Cutty Sark. Owen, why did you pick this building?
So it was partly due to the fact that it took something that worked quite well architecturally and worked quite well as public space, and they managed to make it crap. You can sort of see that the idea was, you know, once it sort of sailed on the sea and now it's going to sail on some, like, sea of glass, and the whole idea is completely infantile.
So why do you think they raised it up and encased it in this glass donut?
I think it's two reasons, one of which is so people can go, ooh, wow, and feel that the 12 quid that they've spent on it is worthwhile. And the other, and I quote, was to create a corporate function room to rival that of Tate Modern.
Was it a hard choice this year?
Actually, no. Usually there's a bit of a fight over it, but this time it was unanimous, which I think says a lot about this building, that there was just a complete agreement that this was the worst building built in the last year.
So how does it go down with architects and developers that win this prize or are nominated?
Well, I mean, sometimes they take it with a certain amount of irony, like the developers of Man Island in Liverpool, which was nominated this year, contacted us to tell us it was actually finished, because it had been nominated 2 previous years but wasn't eligible because it was still under construction. So finally we could get it, and
They're probably quite relieved it didn't actually win, but you know, sometimes it's taken with a certain amount of irony.
This year's shortlist was controversial all the way through, wasn't it?
Yeah, this year it went to Nicholas Grimshaw, who's quite a well-respected architect, designed a lot of important things, you know, like the Waterloo Eurostar terminal and Oxford Ice Rink, and lots of things that are very well regarded. And we got much more response this time, dozens and dozens of letters. And the general gist seemed to be, you know, this can't be the winner, it's by Grimshaw, who's a good architect. And I think in many ways that's all the more reason to give it to him, you know, that he should know better.
So what's the point of the prize?
One of the reasons for it is I don't think people, especially in the world of architecture itself, realise how bad British architecture actually is. That we've, especially in the last 15 years, but really for quite some time, tolerated really, really, really bad buildings. And it's just a way of just going, stop doing this, please. It's a sort of naming and shaming thing, really. That's the idea behind it, and hoping desperately that people might take heed.
And do you think they are taking heed? I mean, it's been going for 6 years now.
No, but 6 years isn't a long time. You've got plenty of time to drive the point home, I think.
Next tonight, in such a grim economic climate, young and inexperienced architects must have nothing more to do than sharpen their pencils, right? Wrong. Here's Ollie Wainwright.
The architecture of the 20th century can be understood as the economy made real. A physical barometer of financial capital.
In times of recession, cities are often left with half-finished stumps, haunted by the ghosts of former boom times, while architects are left with time on their hands. But in the past, these periods have proved to be some of the most creative and dynamic, with optimistic new movements emerging from the depths of economic gloom.
Out of the 1930s depression came the brave new world of modernism and the glamour of deco. The oil crisis of the 70s spawned futuristic ecological utopias and marked the beginnings of sustainable design. While the 90s downturn saw a cool new wave of minimalist chic, a Puritan backlash against the excesses of the 80s. In this recession, the current generation of graduates is taking advantage of the glut of empty spaces to try out new ways of working. Young collective Assemble have transformed an abandoned warehouse into both their workshop and a lively cultural space called Sugar House Studios. But their first project was creating a temporary cinema within the shell of an abandoned petrol station.
We started just by kind of noticing the multitude of empty petrol stations in London and thought that they presented kind of an amazing opportunity to turn this kind of bit of automobile infrastructure into a kind of a new type of public space. We looked at all the kind of classic cinematic iconography like flip-up cinema seats and beautiful red velvet curtains, and we tried to figure out ways of remaking them with a kind of very limited budget.
Assemble's next project, Folly for a Flyover, posed as a building trapped beneath the A12 motorway. Influenced by red brick Hackney houses nearby, it was hand-built by volunteers with reclaimed local materials, and for a 6-week period hosted a pop-up programme of canal-side cinema, performance and play.
That was really about kind of exploring the potential for a kind of as-yet unused space created when the motorway was built to kind of offer a new type of public space in the area, and the fact that things which make it dangerous or make it unused, like being undercover and kind of slightly out of the way, can actually be qualities and assets if they're kind of celebrated in the right way.
And do you think, I mean, this is quite unusual work for architects to be doing. Do you think the role of the architect is changing or has changed since the recession?
I suppose we didn't want to get stuck behind a desk, and we were interested in the way things were built and the way nails went into wood as much as the decisions about which sites we used and how kind of things were designed.
Just around the corner at 3 Mills, a young practice who call themselves We Made That have worked in close consultation with the local community to create a new kind of play space, Wild Kingdom.
The site was re-landscaped last year, and from that landscape they found lots and lots of lumps of granite and bits and pieces. So we try to be quite opportunistic with how we use those things, how we use this landform to create something that's then playable.
But it was very much, I think, about almost making it appear like it grew out of the landscape. So you have some things that are natural, some things that are completely reclaimed from the site, and some things that are brought in as new, but they all sort of come together to create this slightly other environment, which I think is what we were always kind of aiming for with the Wild Kingdom.
I mean, the recession of the 90s, a lot of practices got by doing extensions for rich people, whereas your work seems to be very engaged with the public sector. Is that a change across the board?
It was actually an architect, but it told me that the best time to set up practice is in the recession, because you have to be doing it because you love it and because you're finding projects that you're interested in. You don't do it because you can make a fast buck, but you do it because you're passionate about doing that. And if you do that and you can do it during a recession, then you can certainly survive kind of into the future. So I'm optimistic.
The new wave of young designers are taking the lead with a hands-on approach and building their projects themselves, like this clever theatre-cum-bar space in Hackney Wick.
A lot of our designs sort of start out with a set of rules that are given by a dimension of a scaffold board. So the stadium seating, the 2 boards up, 3 boards back, and that's kind of where you start with.
We've used school chairs and I think chairs from an Indian restaurant that have been cut down and kind of reupholstered. And then the lino, which lines all of the vertical surfaces, was from the media centre of the Olympic Park, and they had a couple of 1,000 square foot of it or something going, so we had some of that and whacked that up.
I mean, one of the biggest things here was like the bar and restaurant have got to make money to fund the theatre, but you can't have noise from a bar and restaurant, so we were trying to, you know, separate the sound barrier, and getting the lino from the Olympics was one of the, you know, the biggest parts of that.
Practice's first commission was to make a temporary bar for the roof of a multi-storey car park in Peckham. Frank's caff was constructed from scaffolding planks, ratchet straps and a big red tarpaulin, all put together by an army of volunteers in just 25 days.
We decided it was a summer project that was going to be fun, and then just emailed all our friends. And loads of them had just finished university, and so a troop turned up and 300 scaffolding boards arrived at the bottom of the car park. So the first challenge was working out how to get them from the bottom to the top.
It was kind of an amazing place to be. It felt like this island above the city and beyond all bureaucracy and beyond normal rules. And we were on that island with our friends building this crazy thing, which we didn't really have any expectation of what it would be beyond completing it.
While most of these projects are only temporary structures put up for fleeting festivities, they are causing important ripples. They are driven by a light-footed, bottom-up approach and an energetic desire to build, with as much interest in the process as the final product. It's a promising start.
That's just about it for tonight. Join us next week to look at the work of New York artist Rashid Johnson and check out Sundance hit Beasts of the Southern Wild. We'll leave you tonight with DJ Roger Sanchez and his musical tribute to the formidable architect Zaha Hadid. Good night.
Have you ever heard anyone say there's no place like home?
This is Sarah. Sarah, this is me mum.
Hey, welcome back. Hello. You're real? We thought he was making you up.
Well, they were right. Now, I've got no problems with bringing a girl home to meet the family.
Shall we adjourn to the lounge?
We're never going there when I bring a new boyfriend home.
We don't want to wear the carpet out.
I just wish it was someone else's.
Welcome to the family, pet.
Welcome to Heaven. Starts Thursday the 18th of October on BBC Two.
A man is down, we rescue him.
You're somewhere you don't belong. Is someone betrayed me? Someone on the team?
Look, I will help you if you'll let me.
I'd let you if I could trust you.
You will never find out. We want you dead. Removal is authorized.
Hunted continues tomorrow at 9 on BBC One and BBC One HD.